Welcome back to the Motivating Force podcast. I'm Josue, he's Justin, and on this bonus episode, happy hump day to everybody. We're going to be talking about MKULTRA and really going into that.
Yeah, I know how we alluded to that on Monday's episode, but today we're actually going to get into MKULTRA itself here a little bit, just because this is where the majority of the conspiracy theories actually lie. A lot of these side projects are just good ideas and things to think about and really, just pick your brain and make you wonder about what's going on out there. But there's still a lot about MKUltra that's unknown or still redacted, classified information. And with all that speculation comes some crazy ideas.
A lot of exaggerations as well. But that's why here on Motivating Force, we have the Falling Off the Edge of the World segment that we like to talk about conspiracies and just random crazy ideas, I guess is the easier way to put it. So yeah, we're going to be talking about MKUltra and its origins, because as a lot of people who are familiar with MKUltra, they know that most files, almost all files about it were destroyed. But it actually came from a project called Project Artichoke. Like we were talking about on Monday, such random names that they give these projects. But Artichoke came from Project Bluebird on August 20, 1951, which they wanted to start using forms of mind control or manipulations of people's consciousness to see if they can get them to do actions unwillingly against their will, which is really interesting, don't you think? Because nowadays, if we can brainwash people and make people do what they don't want to do, it could come to a little bit of our advantage, huh?
Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, when you look at extremists on both sides of the political spectrum here in the United States, they'll tell you that the other side is brainwashed. So let's see how much of that can actually be a reality.
So Project Artichoke started back in the 50s, which again was a couple years after the CIA was created. But it became officially Project MKUltra on April 13th, 1953. So we're going to hit some of these little facts real quick that I have written down, and then we'll get into the conspiracies as we get going. But I just wanted to lay down the steps leading up to why these conspiracies are so vast and exaggerated, because these were actual tactics that our government was using, like trying to force people against their will, because then they can do that to enemy nations and stuff. Like if they had spies over here, we can turn them into double agents, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool when you start looking into some of the basics of it, because I really try to put myself in the mindset of why we would need this type of project to begin with. And of course, with the big scare of atomic warfare and everything with the Cold War, with what could presumably be our largest enemy to the United States, and the devastating effects that could have on the world if we were to go at war. We go through all this stuff here, and we developed our nuclear weapons, our atomic weapons, and Russia gets them by spies, which was the scary part. And then you start thinking really hard about the patriotism and yes, in the bad way, the nationalism that happened during that time period and just the time period before it, because we are just coming out of the world wars. And as individuals here in the United States, we really have that mindset of there's no way that an American would do something to really desecrate America.
Yeah.
Which today seems to be the common. Anyways, the main issue, with that is there's no way they would do that. So how did they get Americans to do that? They must have brainwashed them.
So actually, Project Artichoke, right? Going back to the facts here. The first form of Project MKUltra, it was a mind control program that gathered information together with the intelligence divisions of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and the FBI. Because the CIA was such a baby agency at the time, they were using all these other ones, and like military personnel as well. Because I'm gonna throw up a paper here on the screen, which is it's a memo that's dated from January 1952 that states, quote, "Can we get control of an individual to the point where he will be doing our bidding against his will and even against fundamental laws of nature, such as self-preservation?" So it's like tangible evidence that we were trying to get people to do something when they didn't want to do it. You know, like the whole being against America, but you're an American.
And today being that, it's more common. But yeah, back then it was a little harder to grasp that concept. Yeah.
I mean, now you just immediately think Portland, Oregon.
I think of a couple things that come up.
Okay, so back to the project real quick, though. This is where all the conspiracies come from, because when you think MKUltra, you think of LSD, because that's typically what everybody talks about and how they were given to unwilling participants or people that just didn't know. But Artichoke, it was the first project that they used morphine, like forced morphine addiction, and then they would take it away. So then you would go through withdrawals to see how your brain will react and what lengths it would go to let yourself be under the influence. Like, I want morphine so bad and I'm going through this withdrawal. Yeah, fine, brainwash, or tell me to do something and I'll do it.
Right. It's getting that vulnerability, is creating that weak spot in you.
Yeah, and that's when they would actually start using the LSD to produce amnesia and other variable states in subjects. So to get them like so high that they don't remember anything, or start tripping out so bad that, they're going to be killing somebody and not remember it because of that amnesia.
Yeah, and during that time is when they wanted to control your actions.
Yeah, and around that time as well, isn't that when Woodstock was around?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Woodstock and the hippie movement, and everybody was doing LSD and all that.
Yeah, that's just the coincidence there, because LSD was kind of discovered, or however you want to word that.
Created by the government
around that time. Russia went through a thing where they were buying up LSD from like everybody who wanted to make it in any country, and it was just like the hot commodity in the 70s, and then that also translated to just the civilian world and what was going on there.
So many of these conspiracies don't really have tangible evidence when trying to connect it to MKUltra itself, because now people have exaggerated things to an extent that it's like every celebrity is under some form of mind control. Like after you get to a level in celebrity, like that status, that they take you to like some camp and then they make like a clone of you, or they like brainwash you for trigger words that when they say it and you're being interviewed, then like you kind of just space out. And there's so many clips of people just like in interviews where they'll be talking, they say something, and then the interviewee's just like, it's pretty strange, but then again, it's exaggerated and it's people connecting dots where they're connecting lines to dots that aren't there.
Yeah, because I can tell you, like here when we're doing podcasting, there's a lot of times where
that's us 24/7.
Yeah, it's hard forming those types of sentences together. It's not an easy task.
Yeah, there's no trigger words here. I'm not like, hey Justin, Captain Morgan, and then you're just like tick 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 tick. What is it, a shell? You're not a shell of a man at that point.
That's some good apple juice, tell you what. Spicy apple juice.
So like I was saying, Project Artichoke, it branched off into different sects. And there was Project Bluebird, which people do have a little bit more tangible knowledge off of, as well as Artichoke. But like that 1952 document that we're going to place either in the description or in the video itself, where they talk about, is it possible to manipulate people to do something against their will? They put affirmative. Like that's 100%. Like you can get somebody to do something against their will. But then there were other steps that were like, can we control future events, both physical and mental, on a person against their will? And then, like, are we able to control other states of being against somebody's will or without their knowledge of it? And then they put down on that document, like, maybe at a future date, we'll be able to put that answer as affirmative.
Yeah. Like I was going to say, you noticed how they didn't say that it was like
Impossible.
denied or impossible. They just said, well, we're still doing our research.
Yeah. As it goes on, that answer could change.
Yeah. And I personally, I believe it has for future events, right?
Yeah.
Because, of course, when you talk about manipulating people, like, people do it all day. People get manipulated all the time to do all kinds of things. And a lot of that can be just playing off of human emotion and human nature. And when you really become like, I hate using the word expert because that word means nothing nowadays.
Yeah.
But when you really spend time to educate yourself on human nature and what makes people tick and what makes your brain works, you realize how simple some of those types of manipulations can be.
Yeah. And a lot of it's just as simple as the way you have a conversation. You can manipulate somebody to go and agree with a point that they didn't agree with before.
Yeah. And that's when you talk about mob mentality and like you just body language, the way you present information as well changes people's opinions on things. Salesmen use it for their tactic all the time to get you to buy things that you don't even really want.
Yeah. And what really got me and why I brought that up is because there wasn't really an end date when talking about those projects. Like, remember in Monday's episode when I was giving the 4 different projects that we found that were declassified, they had start and end dates. But in these, like, Artichoke turns into MKUltra, right, on August 20th, 1951. Or wait, April 13th, 1953. There's a lot of dates on this paper. So there's no real end date. And then when it says on that document that, like, in the future, at some future date, we'll be able to change that answer, it's like, oh, so there's a possibility that it's still going on, because for Artichoke, there's a quote-unquote end date.
Yeah.
For Bluebird, kind of one, but MKUltra, almost all the documents were destroyed. So it's like, there's the possibility with the evolution of technology and how we're living in society now as opposed to the 50s, they could just be doing a different tactic to get to the same result.
Yeah, and a lot of that redacted information and destroyed documentation, like you said, Artichoke turned into MKUltra. A portion of a sub-project off of MKUltra was Bluebird. So who knows that when MKUltra was finally revealed to the public and they destroyed everything about it, right? Which could have been for a multitude of reasons because there was a lot of illegal things that the government was doing at the time. So not to be like they discovered something they didn't want people to know. But at that point, when it was discovered, they could have taken MKUltra, changed it to another project that we don't know about, and then destroyed MKUltra.
Yeah, and then that one would still be classified.
And that's the one going on today.
And that's why, okay, so I brought up this point to you earlier when I was saying how MKUltra is pretty much like that scapegoat. It's like the equivalent to, again, these are all conspiracies, right? These are just opinions. It's like the equivalent to the Jeffrey Epstein. He wasn't really the big bad mastermind behind everything, but they're just blowing his name up as he's the bad guy to get fingers away from pointing at the real people.
Yeah.
So it's like everybody's familiar with MKUltra, or for the most part, they know what that is, but they haven't heard Artichoke or Bluebird or probably the other one, if there is another one. But it's like they're making that such a big thing because it's so mysterious since all the documents are destroyed.
Yeah, I agree with that 100% because in the same way where you talk about like Jeffrey Epstein and what happened there, and then once he gets found out, he's the one that gets killed by suicide, and we move forward from it.
He gets murdered by suicide.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, exactly. I worded it properly.
Yeah, he murdered himself.
I knew what I was saying. And it's the same thing I say to people today when they get so riled up about politics and stuff, and they talk about Trump this and Trump that and Biden this and Biden that, no matter what side they're from. And it's like, you realize how small of an impact that really has. it's the president is just that puppet on the top of the platform trying to, of course, do what he wants to do, but he has a whole justice system and Congress underneath him that, one, has to approve everything he says, and Congress and all the justice systems underneath him are the ones that make the laws, define the laws, enforce the laws, not the president.
Yeah, and another thing that doesn't make sense is why would you think he's the one holding all the power if you know who he is?
Yeah.
You know, like, if you have that much power, you don't want to be known. You don't want people to know who you are, that you're the one that's pulling all the strings.
Yeah.
The president, or people in government that are well known, like in Canada, they have
Trudeau.
Yeah, but what's prime ministers?
Yeah.
Apple juice. They have prime ministers and like kings and queens. It's not just a president, but they're known by name by just any civilian. You know, so the people that hold the power don't want to be with that spotlight on them, because that's the people that, like, the conspiracy theorists are going to be looking at Trump's life, every little detail, but not the person behind him.
And it pulls you away from the reality, you know?
Yeah.
Which is something that we covered on Monday's episode. That's exactly the point where I wanted to help people open up their perspective a little bit and understand that, like, hey, you know, they're telling you, look at this, look at this, look at this. And there's so much going on behind it, you know?
Yeah.
And then we do the same thing with like here's a good example for you.
Throw it at me.
Okay. Before the whole COVID thing happened and we had this new thing to worry about, what was the big, I'd call it a pandemic before this one. We had mass shootings.
Yes.
We had mass shootings.
The Vegas shooting, school shootings.
It became like every other week they wanted to talk about a mass shooting that happened.
Yeah.
And then it got old. And then the people who cared a lot continued to care a lot. And the people who didn't. And then they're like, we need to mix this up. And then since COVID happened and all this, I mean, you know, you could tell me, oh, well, it's because everybody's staying at home, which I don't know about you. I still get stuck in traffic every day. But where'd all the mass shootings go?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not to say, you know, particularly like the brainwashing and the mind control, which conspiracy theorists will take it that far with some of these shooters. But it's
especially that Vegas one. The one that happened in Vegas, everybody was saying how like that was an agent that somebody placed up there to shoot everybody. Because why else would they like redact everything about him?
Yeah, in the same way, like, I mean, there's inconsistencies with a lot of those popular shootings, you know.
The Unabomber, I think, was a good one. Not a good one, an interesting story to read about when you think about conspiracies and all this, because they started framing a certain individual when it had nothing to do with him.
If you went and asked 10 different people about what gun was used at Sandy Hook, you're going to get different answers. Because on the news, they wanted to say it was a shotgun. On the police report, they said it was an AR. And then you just had like, and then there was like pistols. And then there was like just this whole mixture of things where it was kind of like, it's like when you get that scam call and they're like, oh, you didn't pay your electric bill, so you need to MoneyGram us. And it's like, what company are you with? And they're like, oh, we're with
Electricity Now.
Yeah, no, they'll just like quickly say like all of them, you know. They'll be like, oh, we're with Duke Energy and ADT, and it's like, hold on, wait, what? So it was like, oh, what gun was used? Oh, it was a shotgun AR.
Yeah,
and it's like,
it's an automatic rifle
on.
shotgun.
Yeah.
Yes,
and I'm not
pistol.
Let me clarify. I'm not downplaying any of this.
Yeah,
right. I'm not saying that these shootings are a conspiracy theory. They really happened. People really got hurt and, you know, life sucks like that. But there's always a bigger picture to these kinds of things sometimes.
Yeah. Like a good one when tying in government conspiracy and shooting, JFK. That there was supposedly one shooter, but then there were also conspiracies that there were two shooters and that it was the mob trying to take out JFK because he wasn't upholding his end of a bargain that got him placed in the presidency. It's a giant rabbit hole, but conspiracies nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think all of it is just like that tie-in like we're talking about where you dump over that fish barrel, you know? These people out there, they dump it over and they have you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, there's all fish there. There's no cocaine in the other barrels.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, there's a lot of cocaine there, you know?
That's a callback to Monday's episode that if you haven't checked that out, go check that out before you continue this so you can understand that reference.
Yeah, because these are, of course, like I said, 2 bonus episodes because we're keeping it lighter this week after such a heavy week last week. But they do still kind of tie together. So
yeah. Backtracking all the way back to MKUltra now. So again, these were forced LSD and drug applications to people that either signed up for the project or didn't sign up for the project. A lot of studies were in certain universities. A lot of studies were on prisoners, right? And then there was one guy that I wanted to write down, James Whitey Bulger, who was a prisoner that actually signed up for the research. So he wanted to be a part of MKUltra so then they can give him a few good years on his record. He killed so many people.
Yeah.
But he's like, hey, give me some good years on the record while I'm here, and then you can do some tests on me, right? So he signed up. He was willing to do it. But later on, after so much LSD and taking him off LSD, putting him back on, overdosing it, he said that he had actual brain damage from it years and years later. But to think that, yeah, it's good that he signed up and that he's a killer and, he's getting brain loss or brain damage, justice. The fact that same scenario could have happened to people that didn't sign up for it.
Yeah.
That's where the problem is with the MKUltra category. With the artichoke, with Bluebird, MKUltra, it's all forced on people that didn't know it was happening to them.
Yeah.
They could have been at some normal doctor's office that wanted to get tested, I don't know, check their HbA1 levels, and then whoop, you got some LSD in your system now.
Yeah. Yep. And it's Operation Midnight Climax, same way, same type of thing. It was just just drugging people and let's find out what happens to them. Let's keep watching them. And it's so much, man, and it makes me think so much too with what's going on today. And it's let's put this big scary virus out there that is really less effective than the flu because the flu still has a higher mortality kill rate.
Yeah.
And but let's make a vaccine for the viral infection, right?
Yeah. Well, real quick, hit me with that conspiracy you were hitting me with earlier, the whole enemy.
Okay. Yeah. So
he knows what I'm talking about. Go on. Yeah.
The idea that I was thinking about as we were watching some more videos and continuing to familiarize ourselves with MKUltra, I kind of got the idea, we talked about the Cold War and everything that happened with Russia, and now hindsight's 2020, right? Once all these classified information starts coming out, we start seeing the bigger picture on things, we tie them all together, things make sense, and then of course the things that don't turn into multiple conspiracy theories and we blow it up, right?
Yeah.
So at the time, we were in kind of a bad relationship with Russia. We had atomic bombs. Russia didn't. They sent spies over or had American defects.
Yeah.
Give them information on it. They created their own atomic bombs. We scared the population of the United States entirely.
Yes. With
fear of atomic and nuclear warfare.
Yeah. But that's without them knowing that we had robot kitties.
Yes.
Robot kitties could have kept us safe, but go on.
Oh, man. So if you would follow me along with the similarities here, today we have
the similarities.
Interesting topics where we've always we've had a fascination, I think, in the last 10 years about different viral infectious things, right? Zombies are a big topic. People think that's cool. We go on off of that all the time. And it's just all this like biological stuff. Like that's what we're super into right now.
Yeah, biological warfare.
Yeah,
That
and we
was like
can
the side race, the arms race, and then there was the biological warfare end of it.
Yeah, nobody back then was scared of it, as far as that aspect went, because of it was what it was, right? But it was the same thing where it was like, well, spies took the atomic bomb from us and all this stuff, so you got to be careful because everybody out there can be your enemy. And then today we're so familiarized with like, bioweapons and all this stuff. Like that's on the consumer market out there for us on the toxic, poisonous media that we consume. And they've turned it the same exact way. We had somebody in office who did not agree with some foreign policies. We've had some issues with other countries in the last 4 years. I think we can all agree on that, right?
Yeah.
We've seen some high tension between some
You can say
world leaders.
You can say
And what happened was
China.
the people that we were arguing with, which happened to be China. Decided to come out with a virus, whether intentionally, unintentionally, whatever you want to do. Whole point I'm getting at, here it is. They created something that can attach to people's minds easily because it's already what we consume with media. So it was a viral infection, something biochemical. So guess what? We all now have that virus. And you have to watch out because you have to wear a mask. You have to wear a face shield. I saw a report where they were talking about how your car's AC system is designed and it can actually allow it to come through and infect you. So you should be wearing a mask when you're in your car.
Wow.
It's a whole news article on it. Research. And it blows my mind.
But also, that only applies if it's at nighttime because research also says that COVID dies in the sunlight.
There you go. So we have this vampire viral infection that is affecting everybody, right? And you have to wear this mask and all this stuff because you never know. The person next to you could have it. Yeah. Oh, what do we do? Oh, we created the fear of your neighbor. Yeah. The same thing we did in the 70s with the Cold War. So there's your first similarity, right? Your second one being we tested out all these drugs on people back in the 70s. So this is an easier transition today because what do? We make a vaccine
that's mandatory
for a viral infection that was originally, well, potentially maybe already researched in 2015 by a familiar name called Rothschild, who has a U.S. patent out there for, some SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19 testing type of things. I don't know. There might be something in the description about that.
There might be multiple pages of, research and data and plans for how they're going to go about all this to get patented in 2015. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So anyways, that might just be in the description of the video. But you get what I'm saying here, man. You see all these similarities. And I'm not saying like vaccines are bad. Like I'm vaccinated. I have my polio and all that stuff, right?
We're not saying COVID's not real.
Yeah.
We're also not saying we're anti-vaxxers because we're not.
Yeah. And it's in the same way that the mass shootings were real.
Yeah.
They were real. People died. It's a tragedy. But there's some influences going on when you look behind the look at this, look at this, look at this. Yeah. And where we're at today is more of the, well, look at this. And everybody's kind of like, well, this is ridiculous. So they go, well, look at this. And now everybody's looking at that and everybody's freaking out. And then we have these little sidebars that you can't see. And we drive people's hysteria up. And we get them to do crazy things.
Yeah. Well, that's the big problem with media. It's that everything's so fear-based. It's like we're attracted to that negative news, the what can kill us kind of news. And they're just feeding off of it and just exaggerating it all.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way we play with media. Because you look at some other countries out there, man, like Canada has a superhero that solves crimes by pretty much like mitigation.
What?
Yeah. It's a zero action. Well, I guess there's action, right? But it's a zero violence type of thing. And it's a superhero and it's like well known and it's like popular and it's like, it's a cool thing. And like Canada, like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And it's like, Here, if you name one superhero that doesn't, the closest one would be Batman, because Batman doesn't kill people.
Yes.
But he's got turrets and guns on his...
Hey, don't you disrespect Batman.
I'm not. I'm saying he's the closest one to being Canadian, apparently.
Yeah.
But, he still has guns and stuff mounted to his bike, and there's still all these explosions and actions and stuff. It's just like, it's how we are as Americans. Yeah. And then you go back to the basic root of what is human nature and what are we susceptible to? And as Americans, we make ourselves susceptible to that type of violence.
Yeah.
So it's easy for things to happen where people might, not saying brainwash or mind control, but people might persuade other people to do some violent actions.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying, tying everything back to that MKUltra thing. It could just be that sidebar project that nobody heard about because it was part of the documents that were destroyed, that they're still going about that tactic of persuading the population without their knowledge or willing to be persuaded.
How far off of the edge of the world do you think we've fallen so far?
I think we fell a little bit too far to North America.
I don't think we can come back from that. Do you have a saving grace?
Saving grace. So real quick, I also just one fun fact about MKUltra before we let everybody go. Wrapping everything back. So on MKUltra, there was 149 known sub-projects, right? Where 6 of them were known to be performed on unwilling humans.
Right.
So there's 149 projects that we know of, but we don't know what they were doing. So that's why this can vary in conspiracies. That's why so many people have, like, Kanye West is a clone. He's been a clone since 2012. Or, like, Taylor Swift is mind controlled, and that's why she stopped doing country songs and now she's a pop star.
I guess that's why Trump took over that DNA file for Kanye then, because, man, he made a switch.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's why there's so many different, like, exaggerations of this one project. Because if there was just, we just did drug tests and we just dosed everybody with LSD, right? And that was the only project for MKUltra, okay, fine. That's what everybody's going to base it off of. But since there's 149 different sub-projects under that, everybody's going to go, okay, well, then there's clones. Then there's, like, graphing, like taking part of you and then making another you, which is a clone. But then, like,
stem cell research, man. That's what it's all about. We're making artificial meat.
But then,
out of it.
Like child stars, the whole Disney thing. Apparently, that's a branch of MKUltra, that they, like, grow all these kids in some lab, and then they manipulate them down this path to be this giant influencer. Because they're not on Instagram; they're on TV. Everybody watches TV.
But see, that's where you take the extremes, right? And it's like, this is where people allow it to blow up to that point where if there really is something going on, they don't really have to hide it too well or make it seem like a big deal, because people will take things so far to the extreme that it makes the parts of it that are true absurd as well, because it comes as a package deal.
Yeah.
So as soon as you say, like, hey, these kids are being influenced, because obviously children are very easily influenced because they don't know anything of the world until you teach it to them. These kids are being influenced to push a specific message towards the other children that watch TV. Okay, you tell me that, I would be like, I guess that could make sense.
Yeah.
But then you tell me these kids are growing in a lab, and I'm like,
nope.
You should go to a mental hospital. You know what I mean? And then the whole thing gets thrown out the window.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Those are the extremes that I've heard that came from just research on what MKUltra is, because it's so, like, there's so much to not know about it.
Yeah.
So it's unreal what people will go to lengths to believe when they really want to believe something.
Yeah, and I hope for our listeners at home, man, you guys should, in my opinion, believe in what makes sense to you. Because here's the point with that. if you're going through, you're following us, you're understanding what's going on in life, and you're really grounding yourself, it becomes crystal clear to use logic and critical thinking to really understand what's going on out there, because you know what's right, you know what's wrong. Don't let the world fool you. So with all that being said, it's just, I know we went really far off on this. But
again, that's also the entire point of this segment.
It is. So I hope you guys enjoyed some of the things we talked about. And, if you want to you pick through it meticulously and be like, oh, you believe this, you believe that, I go for it. Sure. Whatever. Right. But the whole consensus is when you're grounded, you have a structured life for yourself. You're out there pushing forward, doing what matters to you, as in Stoicism, where they preach, you can look at idols and see who you want to become and then go out there and become it. And in the same way, you only need to worry about things that really directly affect you. So do that for yourself. You don't really need to be worrying about if the government's working on mind control projects. Why don't instead you worry about controlling your own mind? Don't feed into your temptations. Don't feed into the negativity of the world. Be positive. Be productive. Go out there and get after it.
Go like this video. Go subscribe. Go share this with your friends. And also go follow us on social media. We got Facebook and Parler at The Motivating Force. We have Instagram at Podcast TMF. And all of our episodes come out Mondays and Wednesdays, 8 a.m. EST. And until then, go get it.